Kathy said, my name is Lisa Moore, and I gave this talk back in February or so. And I usually don't start with a disclaimer, but I'm going to start with a disclaimer, and that is that as an older woman, a middle-aged woman, the more time goes by, the less I remember details. Because you know there's more details that are coming in, so other details are going out. So all the things that I remembered back in February, I may not remember now in November. So if I say, I don't remember, you can just chalk it up to she's 45 and she's doing a lot. So I'll start with that disclaimer. So my son, so I have two children. Gregory is 19, and he is now a sophomore at UNCW studying computer science. And then my daughter Hannah is 17, and she's at ECU, her first year, and she's studying speech therapy. So my son, his special interest when he was 1 was letters and numbers. And so we filled the house. We had the teacher's aid store back then, which was, they had schooling resources for teachers. And so I was in there, I knew him by name, you know, because I was always in there buying resources for my son who had this insatiable appetite to learn. And so he taught himself how to read, and he taught himself how to write, which he still has a horrible handwriting, but it was not my fault. I never taught him how to write, so it was not my fault that his handwriting is indecipherable. But we also found out later that part of that early reading and early writing, he had some communication delays, social delays, and we found out he had autism. So special needs and autism is part of our journey. So we did put him, so when he was 3 years old, he was in 40 hours a week of therapy. I was a stay-at-home mom, put my 2-year-old in preschool because I couldn't juggle everything, and so they were she was in preschool. My son did go to 1st grade after we homeschooled kindergarten, sent the kid to 1st grade, and he was flunking 1st grade math, even though he was doing 3rd grade math when he went to 1st grade. So I pulled him home, and so I kind of called myself a captive homeschooler. I'm really not the one that said, oh, all I ever wanted to do was homeschool my children. I did want to be a stay-at-home mom, but I just didn't dream of sitting at the table and counting bears. I mean, it was just not. Science experiments, I mean, it was not me. And so some of you, that's just what you live for, but me, I just really lived for being under my electric blanket with a book, you know, no kids around. So I was a captive homeschooler, and I did it, but I want to just tell you I was a mediocre homeschooler. So I don't want you to look at me, and as I share about my children in the high school experience, elementary and middle school, they were pretty mediocre. We did a lot of watching YouTube, Tim Hawkins, and we would call it pop culture. You know, we'd watch the song he did, and then like the Chick-fil-A song, and then we'd go back and we'd watch the Beatles, and this is pop culture, you know, this is part of history. So there were a lot of days where like at noon I was just like, okay, we're done. So I just want you to know I was mediocre. Now when I spoke back in February, Melissa Meehan introduced me, and she was saying all these nice things about, you know, example and all this, and I was sitting in my chair and I was thinking, who is she talking about? Because I always thought of myself as this mediocre homeschooler, and if you look to the right tonight and you look to the left, you're probably going to think both of those women are doing it right and you're doing it wrong, right? And so that was the way I was. If somebody said, oh, Heart of Dakota, I was like, oh, I need to be doing Heart of Dakota. And then when CC came along, I was like, I just can't even compete with that. I mean, I'm just not even going to try. So I just kind of put up blinders like this. And as long as I didn't look at what she was doing and what she was doing, then I didn't want to quit, and I could do it one more year. Because especially homeschooling a kid with autism, I mean, he just didn't fit the books. He really didn't fit the books. It all had to be on a screen. And so all of y'all were sitting at your tables, doing all your nice things with your children, and my kid was on the screen, and I felt like I was so horrible. But I finally found a book that said, it was about homeschooling kids with autism, and it said use the screen. And I was like, thank you, Jesus, I'm doing something right. So if I give any inspiration, it's that when you homeschool, you just have to put the blinders up and not look at what she's doing or what she's doing, but do what's right for your family and what you can do and be sane at the same time, right? Because if I did CC and we did copy work, I would be in the loony bin because my kid could have never, he just couldn't have done that. So we did a lot of screen. They did a lot of independent learning, and that's really what they wanted to do. They didn't want Mama to sit at the table, and I was kind of okay with that because Mama would have rather been in the same room, you know, while they did their work. So somehow I managed to do well in high school, and I think it's because I'm an overachiever. A couple things, I'm an overachiever by nature, so my kids did have some high expectations because they just had those, and bless their hearts, I'll pay for those therapy sessions later, but Mama expected a lot. And always with my son, even with autism, I expected him to do well. I expected a lot from him. And I was also frugal, so I didn't want to pay all that money for college. So you add in frugal and you add in overachiever, and somehow we did really well in high school. So the two things that we did was dual enrollment and CLEP exams, and I love Jesus and I love to share the gospel, and I love the gospel of dual enrollment and CLEP exams as well. So it is something I'm passionate about. I get excited sharing about it, and I've done a lot of phone calls, and I've sat with Heather. I've tutored Heather. I've been a forerunner among my friends, and I've tutored my friends that are coming behind me. This is how you do it. So this is what I want to inspire you, and hopefully I started out with that mediocre homeschooler thing, so you would see that I do have some humility, but I want to share with you what my children were able to achieve, not so that you think, wow, she was the bomb, but I want to inspire you with what is possible for your children, and at least what is accessible, really, for all children. So here's the inspiration, and I was going to show you on my little iPad mini, but it's hopefully filming right now. So back in May, my daughter Hannah, come back a little picture, at barely 17 years old, graduated from Cape Fear with her associate in arts degree. So that was a big day for the Moore family. She was 17 years and 2 months old. So technically she graduated college before high school, but we rewrote the books for Cape Fear because they had never had a homeschooled student graduate with an associate in arts or any associate's degree. They had the early college students, and they had done it, so they knew how to do it for them, but for her, they didn't even know how to process her diploma because she hadn't graduated high school. So even though I needed those Cape Fear credits for her to graduate high school, I technically had to graduate her from high school, and then she could get her diploma even though she had already walked the stage. So it was very convoluted. It took 3 or 4 phone calls to figure out how do you graduate this 17-year-old student. And the beautiful thing about it was she did it for about $2,000. Now, right now she's at East Carolina University. It's with room and board and tuition. It's about $15,000 a year, which is $6,000. Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can get my math. I did take some higher math. $7,500 a semester, so you know, $1,500, $2,000 per class. Per class, her psychology class, $2,000. But she did a whole 2-year degree, got about 80 hours, 80 credits for $2,000. So some of the questions that we ran into, I get really thirsty, so I have to drink a lot. Some of the questions we ran into as we were accumulating all these credits and taking all these classes was, well, what about scholarships? And so what I learned is that students that do dual enrollment and do CLEP are still treated as first-year students in terms of scholarships. So the beauty of what my daughter was able to do, when she went to ECU, they offer 20 full rides, and she got one of them. She was the only homeschooled student. They have about 1 homeschool student a year that gets one of them, because when you think about leadership, I mean, she wasn't the captain of the cheerleading squad, and she wasn't running track, and she wasn't leading the National Honor Society. There aren't as many opportunities to put those big letter things on your transcript, so she really had to shine with what she was able to accomplish. And even during her interview, they said, what are you passionate about? Of course, we had rehearsed in the 2-hour right up there, we prepped. She talked about dual enrollment and how she was passionate about dual enrollment and how students can use their time wisely and achieve so much, even in high school. So when she started ECU this fall, she started technically as a junior with about 80 hours. And she should be able to get her, she's going to study speech therapy, she should be able to get her degree plus a minor in about 3 years, which is good because for speech therapy she'll have to get a master's too. So she's got about 5 years of school. My son, he also started college as a junior. The beautiful thing about that was at ECU, if you were a junior, you got to park over at Trask. If you were a freshman, you had to park across the street. So this mama didn't want to think about her kid with autism crossing the street. So she was really glad that he could park on campus. So the hours really helped them in a lot of other ways. And he didn't get the full ride scholarship to UNCW, but he was one of the 15 finalists for it. And he did get a nice scholarship. So when colleges are looking at these homeschooled students, they're seeing, well, did they take advantage of everything that was available to them? And CLEP is one way to do that. And I do know some families just have trouble with sending their children to a community college or doing any type of education outside the home, and I respect that if that's where you are. But I would just say that my experience, and I'm very protective, my son has a peanut allergy, he has autism, I'm very protective, but we had an amazing experience. I mean, I could almost cry just talking about our Cape Fear experience and just how wonderful everybody was. We worked with the Disability Resources Office there to get him accommodations. They were just amazing. Brian Weeks was amazing. He's great at returning phone calls and emails, and that really rates highly in my book. So we had a good experience there. And also the beauty of accomplishing some of these hours early, I had a great college experience, but it was hard taking 18 hours a semester. You worked your butt off. My son, next semester, he's going to register next week, and we talked about what do you take and how many hours, and he says, well, I feel like I want to take 13 hours because I'm going to be taking some harder courses, and I just said, okay, because he earned that. I mean, he accomplished 60 hours in high school. So if the kid wants to take 13 hours, okay. Last semester he took a class, he wanted to take developmental psychology. He didn't need any of those core requirements for freshmen because he accomplished all those. But he wanted to take it because he has autism, so he wants to know how the rest of us think. So he didn't need it for anything, but I just said, okay, you earned the right to be able to take those classes because now they have freedom. If they want to take 12 hours, take 12 hours. If you want to take underwater basket weaving, just go right ahead. So it gives you some freedom if you work a little harder in high school, but you're doing two things, killing two birds with one stone. So I want to start with dual enrollment, and I do apologize if I'm jumping all over the place because there's a lot of information to share here. So dual enrollment, okay, so on the back of your sheet, I'll show you. This was current as of February. There were 2 programs offered by Cape Fear. One is the Associate in Arts, and on the back side is the Associate in Science. Now, I've already said that I'm an overachiever and I expected a lot from my children, so we started with the Associate in Science, and then I discovered that was harder to complete. And so then we decided we'll just do the Associate in Arts instead because it's easier to complete. It doesn't take quite as much hard work. And so my daughter did the Associate in Arts, my son didn't finish. So my son started the second semester of his junior year because up until that point, I didn't even know if the kid could go to college. So I didn't even know. Because when you have a kid with autism, you just don't know until you get there if they can drive, if they can go to the bank, if you don't know what they can do. So in his junior year, we started him out with one course, and that was Western Civ, and it was his special interest. So he started second semester junior year and then took pretty much a full load his senior year. But my daughter, we started earlier with her, and so she started with 2 classes her first semester. So I recommend 2 classes their first semester. 3 is okay, but 4 is probably a little much, and Heather's son did that, burnt him out. So from experience, it's good to say, okay, go for it. 2 classes, probably 3, because they're going to be getting used to college life, dealing with professors. I mean, that is just a thing in and of itself. And I do have on one of your sheets, there is a website called ratemyprofessors.com When we were in college, it was called word of mouth. Don't take this guy, right? He's horrible. Wait and take it the next semester with the TA because he's easier. That's what I did with fluid mechanics. Don't take it with the professor. Take it in the summer with the TA. So ratemyprofessors.com, you can go and look and see what these kids are saying about the professors. There was one economics professor that was horrible at Cape Fear, and he was the only one, I think Zach might have taken him. We didn't take economics, we took ethics instead, because, you know, and of course any student that's struggling, you know, you say bad things for a lot of reasons, but when you have a lot of students saying a lot of bad things, well, there might be something going on there. So I will just confess, I had no shame in letting my students take the easy professor. You know, if it said they could get their 3 credits and it was going to cost me $70, let them get their 3 credits. $2,000 at ECU, $70 with an easy professor. I mean, they're going to be challenged enough when they get to university if that's their path. So if it's an easy music appreciation class, let them take it. I mean, that was just me, even being an overachiever, because these days, secondary or college education is just so expensive. If you can save with an easy professor and get an A that's going on their high school transcript, I just did it. I mean, I just have no shame. I just did it. And I'm an overachiever, and we did it. So some of the professors will be easy, and my kids will say, you know, compared to university, some of that was really easy. Some of it was more challenging, like that ethics class, my son had to really work, and because there was a curve, he got an A. But he had to really work, and I couldn't really help him that much, because ethics, that was all just over my head and too hard for me to think about at this stage in my life. So we did some of the easy classes. Some of them were easy, some of them were hard. And as Kathy said, in dual enrollment, well, in high school, you need recommendations. So Nelson Bolu, Mr. B, they call him out at Cape Fear. I don't know if he's going to win. I think it's the county commissioner seat. You've probably seen his signs out there. So he was Gregory and Hannah's political science, like American government, taught my kid about why to vote. The Western Civ professor, he wrote he wrote Gregory a recommendation. And that's what got him to be one of those finalists for the UNCW Lutzy Scholarship. The public speaking professor, who's Kate Santuff, and she also works with the early college kids. She's an amazing woman, a personal friend, so she taught public speaking. She wrote both Hannah and Gregory recommendations, college, you know, scholarship winning recommendations for both of them. So as your kids are in these dual enrollment classes, have them take a couple with one professor, have them cultivate relationships with them, because they're the ones that are going to write your bomb diggity college scholarship recommendation, and even a college recommendation if you need that. So that's another beautiful thing about dual enrollment. Another thing is when you're doing your transcript and calculating GPA for dual enrollment, you can add that extra point for that college class. So a 4 in that ethics class, you know, an A, got him 5 points. And so I showed on our transcripts both the weighted GPA and the unweighted, and I showed the scale for how I weighted it. And we're going to talk about CLEP, and I'm just going to tell you the way I did it. And, you know, we each do what's right before God with our conscience. Like my daughter in fine arts, she always got a 95. For some reason, that just felt like a good grade to me, so she always got a 95. That's just how I did it. But when it came to CLEP, if my children prepared for, and we'll talk about this, prepared for and passed a CLEP exam, I gave them an extra point, because that's the same as teaching for AP in my book. You know, we worked harder, we prepared for it, we spent time, and so that's just the way I did it. You can do it the way, you can research it, you know, you can Google, should you do this, should you not, but that's what I did. If they, just like for an AP exam, when my son took an AP exam, he got that extra point, and so I did the same if we did that same level of CLEP preparation. And so you can take that or leave that. That's just the way I did it. Kathy may have a different idea, but that's just the way we did it. So, so with dual enrollment, I'm going to have you flip around. Turn to the back side of that front sheet. is showing you what my daughter took. So her first semester, she took those 2 classes, like I said. The beauty, too, of dual enrollment, because I'm a woman who loves my jammy pants, and I have raised a daughter who loves her jammy pants. So when you look at these classes, about half of them were online. So she was at home, safe, with me, in her jammy pants. And we were all there together. And in our schoolroom, we had banks of desks and computers. And my son's desk was on the right, and my daughter's was on the left. And I loved it when we were just all sitting there together. And they were doing their classes. You know, I was in my jammy pants, and I didn't have to do anything but just, you know, pay for it. So there are lots of online classes, and that's a beautiful thing, and they'll get the hang of it. And even in college, my son, he's taken an online art class this semester and an online computer science class. So, and studies do show, if you do the research, there are studies that show that on average, the average student will score 7 points less in an online class. Just because I guess there's not that accountability of going to class and that routine. But for my students, they still scored well. So that's the average student. Our students don't have to be average, but just to let you know, there is that potential that a student, like when my son took calculus, because math is one of history was always really easy for him. Math and just keeping up with all those details was harder for him. So when he had to take calculus, he took it at school. You know, when my daughter took calculus, actually she took calculus online, but I think she took physics in class. So some of them you have to decide if it's their strong point, then take it online. If it's an area where they struggle and they would benefit from the blackboard and chalk or, you know, the dry erase board, so have them take it in class. So does that help a little bit? But the online classes were amazing. Now when it comes to cost, for Cape Fear, as long as the student has not graduated, classes are free. So even when they finish their program, like my daughter completed the whole pathway. They have to complete the whole pathway before they can take any other classes at Cape Fear. So she completed her whole pathway in December. And then she wanted to take a couple, Mama made her take a couple more classes because she needed an English. So I had her take creative writing, and I think she needed a communications class for Cape Fear. So for ECU. So those classes, even though she finished the dual enrollment pathway because she still had not graduated, they were free. So you do have to pay fees. It's about $25 a class. It's very affordable. Yes?
Just one clarification. As long as they've not graduated
high school? Yes.
So, does that mean as long as they haven't accumulated all the credits that they need for high school, or you haven't technically put into the state to graduate them?
I think as long as you have not graduated them and given them a diploma.
I didn't graduate Zach until August this year, so he could take a few more summer classes for free.
Yeah. So it is tuition free. You still pay for the fees. Books, on average books, $60 because you can rent from Amazon. $25 to $30 a textbook a semester. We sent back books that were water stained and dog-eared and looked horrible, but Amazon took them back. So when I shop for textbooks, I check Amazon first, and especially for these community college courses that they're not going to need that public speaking book to complete their computer science degree. So Amazon is a great place to shop for books. And again, we would price what was on campus, what was Amazon, what was the rental, but Amazon will ship you those books. They'll use them. They'll give you a postage paid label. You ship them back. So $60 on average for books.
And my daughter had something where she did that this year, for the, like the semester for the first time. And I don't know if she was confused or the little advertisement with Amazon, but she needed the online
Code.
Yes. And it's claimed this is new in package, and the online wasn't there with it.
Yes.
You know. And when she did purchase the online code, they gave her an ebook.
Oh, okay.
So she sent back the text.
Yeah. so that was a problem. So a lot of textbooks these days, they do have these online key codes. So that makes them more expensive. You know, you're definitely looking at least $100 if they want that online key code. So that does add up. So let's see. So rate my professors, jammy pants, recommendations. So for my daughter, she took, from the spreadsheet, 2 classes in the fall, and then, yes?
What high school year did she start taking?
So dual enrollment, it's not by age, but it's when they start their junior year. So the spring before their junior year is when you would apply, and that application, it usually came available around January. And it's probably, I think it was due March, April. Any of you that have done it recently? Beginning of April. So they can take a beginning in 11th grade. So it doesn't matter how old they are, beginning in 11th grade. So she took 4 classes, second semester junior year. She took a class over the summer because I had set my goal. At that point I knew if we do this, and this, we can have that associate in arts degree. And that was our goal. Now really in the long run, you know, 30 years from now, is it going to matter if she got that associate in arts degree? No, because she's going to have a 4-year degree. But where it really mattered was helping her get that scholarship, helping her get all those hours, only costing me $2,000 for 2 years worth of college. So that's where it matters, you know. And if she wasn't doing any more college education, associate in arts was a really good place for her to start. So we did this intro to computers over the summer. Again, that was an online course. We traveled, we went to the mountains, she did school, brought her books. They do need Wi-Fi for that. So, and then she took 4 classes in the fall, Western Civ, physics, calculus, art, and then 2 in the spring. So she got 39 hours from Cape Fear taking classes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Do you, I know that these are little details that you may not recall, but going through each semester, could you just maybe try to remember which she take online, like, you know, her first semester in American Lit and Government, did she go on, because I know you said they went to North Campus, right?
My kids went to North.
Did she go to North Campus for both of those,
Well,
or did she do online?
She went, I know she did music appreciation online and college transfer online, intro to computers online. American Lit and American Government, she both did in class. And she did public speaking in class. And then I don't remember the senior year, but she did go to North Campus her junior year, and then by her senior year, Mama trusted Jesus enough to let her drive downtown. So that was a big thing, to let her drive downtown and park in the parking deck, you know, 16 years old, and so, yeah. So she was able to do that.
The spring of 2016 was downtown?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about CLEP. And again, these things are all related. So let's turn to one more page about Cape Fear, because this will kind of lead into CLEP. So turn to the Associate in Arts, which is the first side of those 2 pathways. Okay, see up at the top where it says English 111. So this is your basic first semester college English. It's going to be a prereq for all of those humanities. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Actually, for a lot of the humanities and a lot of the social science. So you can't take American history unless you've taken the first semester English. You can't take American Lit unless you've taken that first semester English. Well, your child can take a CLEP that will give you credit for that first semester of English, so then they can have the freedom to take what they want. They don't have to worry about that prereq. So CLEP will meet Cape Fear prereq. So it all works together. The CLEP will give them credit, like credit at ECU and UNCW, but it's